There's no excuse for hitting your wife. I'm going to be very rude right now. That is such a weak chicken shit thing to do. There's this thing called emotional dysregulation, which is just the fancy term for meltdown. And so when you two are at the point where you're at risk of being violent, that storm's just going to have to write itself out. The energy is too high in that moment, and nobody's going to be able to predict their behavior in that moment. So intervening in that moment, that heated moment, is a waste of time and energy. So the two of you, given your backgrounds and that you both can explode and get violent, you have to think in terms of prevention. Intervention is useless with a capital U. You have to prevent. You have to catch escalation. You have to catch escalation early. At the first sign of either one of you escalating, somebody needs to say, hey, I sense that this thing is going south. Let's take a time out from one another. This is not a shutdown. I'm not trying to avoid the issue. We will come back, but I'm getting worked up, and we don't want to keep repeating this same stupid mistake. So you go your way, I'll go my way and decompress over here at the other end of the house. And then when I've calmed down and I'm back in parasympathetic mode instead of sympathetic mode, which is a flood of adrenaline and cortisol, I'll check with you to see where you're at. Have you re-engaged your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, versus the sympathetic nervous system, which is on fight or flight? And then when we both are in parasympathetic mode or thereabouts, then we'll come back and try again. And if we come back again and things start to escalate again, you're going to what? You're going to catch it early. Don't wait till it hits 10. Wake up around, that's why I'm clapping my hands, trying to wake your ass up. You're going to catch it around level 2 and bail. It's level 2, let's bail. There's nothing wrong, by the way, of taking multiple timeouts. There's everything wrong with trying to hang in there with a flood of cortisol and adrenaline. There's everything wrong with going, well, this, I'm never going to discuss this topic again. One's just as bad as the other. But there's nothing wrong with going, okay, I think it's getting a little hot in here. Let's bail. We'll come back, pick up where we left off. She's calm, he's calm, they come back. If it heats up again, okay, timeout number 2. There's no limit to the timeouts. If you have to have 12 timeouts to deal with one issue, hey, God bless you. When he's challenged socially and emotionally, raises his anxiety, and he regresses to adolescence. So now you have an adolescent trying to parent someone who's not much younger than he is. You have a 14-year-old trying to parent a 10-year-old, for example. And so when he gets very reactive and calls them names, he has officially regressed to adolescence. His regression to adolescence, when he is anxious due to lack of social and emotional skills, that's a hardwired thing. It's unfixable. But on the other end, you have to set some boundaries in this case. You're going to have to be the tough person and set some boundaries and you want to have this discussion with him before the next event comes up. And this is another difficult discussion where you're going to set some hard boundaries, and that is when you name call the kids, it has high potential and even likelihood of damaging their self-esteem. And as their mother, when you call my kids names, you may as well just call me those same names. I'm going to draw a line in the sand with that. I'm not going to stand by and watch you destroy our children's self-esteem. And then you're going to have to go further down the pike with then not only having this tough conversation with him and knowing certain terms, being very assertive, but you have to be willing to follow through with some consequences if he goes against your command. There's not a wish or want or a hope anymore. I'm telling you that this is not going to go on. I'm not asking you to be okay with this. I'm telling you, I'm not going to allow it. And you'll have to play hardball. You've got a choice. I can either not say or do anything that raises his anxiety, or I can protect my children. You can't have both. You can't, well, I want to have that conversation, but I don't want to be that assertive, and I don't want to raise his anxiety. That's a mismatch. That's not going to happen. You're going to raise his anxiety, and I want you to raise his anxiety. If you have this conversation with him and you don't get him out of his comfort zone, he's not going to be willing to change. If you have this strict conversation with him and use some of the lines that I gave you, it is going to push him out of his comfort zone. It's going to raise his anxiety. And he's not going to want to keep going through that conversation over and over again. And every time he name calls, you have that same conversation. That's what I'm saying. You're going to have to get tough. And you're going to have to be willing to go to war on this. Whatever consequence you have, it has to be a motivator to stop calling the kids names. It has to hurt. It has to hurt him, or he won't be motivated to change behavior. So you'll have to decide, am I going to tippy-toe around on thin ice for fear of raising his anxiety? And by the way, if it was about most other things just between the two of you, I might even suggest, yeah, well, maybe just go the extra mile, try not to raise his anxiety. But when it comes to verbal abuse to the kids, no. Now, that's a different ballgame now. I have worked with too many couples where she was more concerned about keeping the peace than protecting the children. It ends very badly. Let's just put it like that. As the adult child, it ends up very ugly for them.
Okay, and I have a question from a neurotypical wife, and she states, my husband with ASD level 1 is almost completely heartless dealing with our children. He's rude and mean and sometimes verbally aggressive. Is it common for people with autism to have no empathy? And will this verbal aggression become more violent over time? Well, the lack of demonstrated empathy is possibly the most dysfunctional aspect of Asperger's or high-functioning autism. But I do use the term demonstrated empathy for a very important reason, and I want to be very clear about this. It's not that people on the autism spectrum have no empathy. They do. Rather, they often give the impression that they do not care about other people. However, this is due to their mind blindness, alexithymia, executive function deficits, anxiety, and even sensory sensitivities, and has little to do with their ability or willingness to have feelings for others. Now, that's no excuse to be verbally aggressive towards the children, though. People on the autism spectrum experience difficulties in basic elements of social interaction that could include lack of social and emotional reciprocity, impaired nonverbal behaviors, for example, making eye contact, noticing facial expressions of others, the posture and gesture of others, and so on. Also, failure to seek shared enjoyments or achievements with others is common. And lastly, it's not uncommon for these individuals to fail to develop long-term close relationships, with the exception of very close family members. People on the autism spectrum are usually withdrawn around others unless they're talking about their special interest or it's work-related. The individual on the spectrum may engage in a one-sided, long-winded speech about his favorite subject while misunderstanding or not even recognizing that the listener's not even paying attention. This social awkwardness has been called active but odd, and this failure to react appropriately to social interaction may appear as disregard for others' feelings and may come across as insensitivity, selfishness, and even narcissism. The cognitive ability of people on the autism spectrum often allows them to articulate social norms in a laboratory context where they may be able to show a theoretical understanding of others' emotions. However, they typically have difficulty acting on this knowledge in fluid, real-life situations. People with the disorder may analyze and distill their observation of social interaction into rigid behavioral guidelines and apply these rules in awkward ways. For example, forced eye contact, which can result in a demeanor that appears rigid or even socially naive. Also, in childhood, they desire to have companions and fit in with their peers, but that desire often becomes numbed through a history of failed social encounters through childhood, adolescence, and into adulthood. Now, regarding verbal aggression, in a nutshell, what you're dealing with here has a lot more to do with the traits of the disorder than it does with your husband's inability to empathize with his children. But and this is a big but, having mind blindness, alexithymia, executive function deficits, anxiety, sensory sensitivities, and so on, does not give him a license to be verbally aggressive towards his children. And to your husband and the other autistic husbands out there that are listening, children are safe targets, and it's very cowardly for you to pick on somebody smaller than you. You wouldn't treat a man your age, your height, your weight the way you treat your kids, now would you? It's the cowardly, wimpy thing to do. It's the most immature behavior that you can resort to vent towards safe, innocent, vulnerable targets like children. And karma will have something to say about that at some point. So you may think you're getting away with that. You are not. Hey guys, this is Mark, and I've got a message to the people on the autism spectrum, specifically the spouses, and I want to be a little critical here, but I have your best interest at heart, and so that's why I'm mentioning this. Your downloads are severely compromised. We'll use the example of the ASD husband and the NT wife. We'll pick a worst case scenario too. Let's say that she is upset, wants to address the issue now, doesn't want to wait, and she's animated, and I'm going to be a little sarcastic here with her, and she drones on for too long, and she talks about 4 or 5 problems, and she's upset, and she's talking about feelings, and she's bringing up the past and all of these things. Your reception is a lot like, let's pretend you're on a mountain in Alaska and you're trying to tune into an AM station in San Diego. You can barely hear anything. You're picking up on about every 10th word. That's how your brain operates in those moments. When she is upset, you are anxious, and you're only able to listen to maybe 80% of what she says, and you're only going to understand 60% of that, and you're only going to retain 40% of that. And if she's asking you to do something, you're probably only going to follow through with maybe 10% of that, if at all. And so the message to this video is, you have to be careful in these risky conversations, because you're picking up on so little data that she is going to assume that because you're not picking up on it, it's because you're not listening and you don't care. So to the guys with ASD, the husbands, it would be good for you to ask your wife when she's upset if it would be possible to wait until she's calm before she mentions it. If she would just bring up one topic instead of multiple topics. If you could keep the conversation fairly short. If she could not bring up the past, unless it's something you can fix, or if it's a past issue that's also a current issue. And not talk about feelings, instead just talk about needs. Ask her if she would do those things, because if she doesn't, she's might as well just speak Chinese to you. So your downloads are severely compromised anyway, even in some best case scenarios. If you have ASD level 1, you're going to have some element of mind blindness, some element of alexithymia, which is emotions blindness. You're going to have some executive function deficits. You're not going to have all of them, but you're going to have more than one. And you're certainly going to have anxiety. All of that stuff messes with your reception severely. And so your downloads are only about 20% complete. If you were to, let's say for example, go on iTunes and download a song, that song would download 100% accurately. It would download on your computer exactly as it was designed. But when your wife is talking to you, especially about a relationship problem, and she's upset, your download is going to be about 90% off. And then the two of you operate after that conversation or that argument, the two of you operate based on your limited amount of information that you downloaded. You're only operating on 10% of information that she delivered. It's not enough. It's not going to work. And then she's going to run the risk of assuming that you just don't listen and don't care and don't want to understand, which that's not what's going on. So again, your downloads are severely compromised, especially in worst case scenarios. So ask her if she would give you a heads up that she needs to talk. Only talk to you when she's calm or nearly calm. Stick to one problem at a time. Be very concrete and specific in her delivery. Try to keep it short. Try to talk about needs and facts rather than feelings. Don't bring up the past unless it's something you can fix or it's still relevant to the present. You will need to ask her to do these things. Otherwise, your reception is going to be so far off, nothing gets resolved. And it's worse than that. Not only will things not get resolved, it'll make a bad problem worse. Hey, this is Mark Hutten. Would you like to schedule a one-on-one Zoom call? Okay, it's so simple. Just look under any of my videos in the description area. Click on this Calendar link. Now you see my calendar. Pick your month, your day, anytime that's available. Enter your name and email address. Then you'll get a follow-up email with the Zoom link on the day and time that you picked. And voila, we will talk.